Hello, this is Abby.
Dear Abby, this is gonna be a long one.
Oh boy.
Dear Abby, how do you tell the difference between a new exciting crush and a rebound?
Does it matter?
Dear Abby.
Dear Abby.
Dear Abby.
Welcome to our little corner of the internet. This is the Dear Abby podcast. I hope you stay and hang out with us. See you in a sec. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Dear Abby. I hope everybody is having a fantastic day. Today, my energy is pretty sad and low, and so if that translates to a snotty sounding episode, I am very sorry. And if you're watching on YouTube, I look a little bit puffy and red. I have had a pretty heavy cry the past hour. Lots of tears, lots of sad feelings. I was going to talk about something else today, but I'm going to pivot and I'm just going to talk about how I feel and not just like dump all of this stuff on you, but I think it's something that a lot of people experience with OCD, anxiety, depression, even like being highly sensitive and certain things. And that is being lonely. A lot of people can relate to the feeling of loneliness. I have a lot of people around me that love me, and I know I have support from people. I have a wonderful fiance, but sometimes you just still feel lonely with your mind, because sometimes it's hard to translate your mind or your heart to somebody else perfectly. And so sometimes it just feels really lonely, I think, to not feel understood by those around you, even if they try. So it's nothing to do with a lack of them trying, but it's just kind of how life is sometimes with some things. And it's not just mental illness. It could be with grieving a loved one that passed away. It can be really specific things that you've experienced in a heartbreak that you've experienced that nobody else around you, close to you, has experienced. And so that pain is really lonely. So I might do dubs and L's, but I'm gonna do dubs and L's at the end if I do them, just because I want to stay in like this. I want to be in tune with how I'm feeling, so that way I can hopefully be more eloquent with the feelings and thoughts that I have relating to feeling lonely. So what I really want to talk about, obviously, is feeling lonely. But specifically, I think for me, I've always been surrounded by people. I have a big family. I have had friends. But for some reason, because they don't experience the same things that I do, it makes me feel really lonely. And so I'm speaking on the experience of feeling lonely when you're with other people. That's just a common experience for people who are in their heads a lot, or who have like an illness or a mental illness that people around them who are their loved ones don't have. And everybody feels this way in times of their lives. And so I don't think it's just uniquely an experience that I'm having, but because I am having the experience, it is very valid and it is very real. So I think sometimes I guilt trip myself and make myself feel dumb for feeling sad or lonely, because I'm like, but I have so much. But I don't have really that many people that really understand some parts of me, and that's kind of been a struggle, I think, for a lot of my life, is to find friends and people who really get it. And by it, I mean my mental illness and just my struggle with OCD and that side of my brain. Anyways, going back to what I was saying, sometimes I make myself feel bad for feeling lonely because I have so much. But every single one of us, every single person, I think, has little nooks in their heart that are just really lonely. And that feels really lonely. They have little like holes in their heart that feel really lonely. That's the best way I can describe it. Sorry. I'm not gonna say sorry. I am very emotional today, and that's okay. Also, the leaf blower guys are outside, so I'm sorry if you can hear that in the background. So I'm gonna share some of my experience and why I think today just made me feel extra lonely. And just, I think, how this is coming up. I'm actually really shocked about how this concept and this feeling of loneliness is coming up, because there's really nothing that happened today that's like, oh, you're lonely. No one said anything to me. No one did anything to me. It was just kind of a normal day. It was kind of a rough start, but I was just feeling a little bit anxious, yes, last night. And then this morning I was feeling kind of anxious again. Cut, and we're going to go back to the beginning. Sometimes I feel, in the spirit of being honest on my podcast, today is going to be a little bit different of an episode. Well, not really, but I'm just going to be pretty emotional. I think sometimes I feel like an imposter if I have a bad day, or if I have a hard day, or if I feel sad or overwhelmed with some type of emotion. I sometimes feel like I'm doing something wrong because I have some big feelings that has nothing to do with like your mental recovery, because no matter how recovered you are, you will have good days and bad days that might have nothing to do with your recovery or what you're struggling with. It could just be something totally, maybe a little bit related, but not the exact thing. And there'll always be stuff in life that comes up. So it doesn't mean that there's a lack of doing really good, powerful work when you have a long, hard day like this. And when you have big emotions, there's nothing wrong with that. So that's not something that really needs to ever change at all. So I just want to make that super clear. And I think I'm reminding myself too. So yeah, I had a normal day. I woke up. It was kind of a rough start to the day because I wanted to get there. I wanted to get to work a little bit early so I could leave and go to the gym a little bit earlier before a lot of people got there. That didn't really work out. And I was feeling like frustrated with that. Just a lot of frustration today. And that usually shows up in like I feel really tight in my chest and my heart feels totally closed, and like there's like a rock hard wall that's closing it in. I also have a lot of energy that makes me feel like I could punch a hole through the Hulk's stomach because of all the rage that I feel. And I'm not PMSing, by the way, but that's also something that happens. Anyway, so I went to work. Normal day at work, pretty chill. I'm still trying to get more comfortable with socializing at work. I'm still not the most extroverted or bubbly type of person, and I don't know if I ever will be, but I still try to like engage, but sometimes I just get anxious and I don't know what to say, and then afterwards I'm like, I feel so stupid. Why did I just do that? Why did I say that? So there's just a lot going on in my head. I still felt this closing and tightness, and that definitely doesn't help in social situations. I left work, I went to the gym, I started lifting, and my knees have been hurting recently, and so has my back, and I get migraines very often. And I think I've just been trying not to complain and be like, oh, I'm grateful for my body, I'm grateful for this, I'm grateful for that. So I don't want to complain, I don't want to be annoying. But in doing so, that just made my frustration with everything increase immensely. Not that I had to complain, but I think I needed to like take that seriously and be like, okay, I seriously need to relax. I need to ask for help. I need to be clear that, Keaton, I need you to massage my back when I get a migraine, and every time. Yes, I can do all of the work, and I've been doing stretches and yoga and working out, and I try to get up and stretch at work to make sure my neck isn't stuck in the same position. And so I'm trying different things, but even in the trying, we still have to hold ourselves with grace and with compassion and with understanding, because I'm doing so many things to help, but I'm still experiencing the painful symptoms of sitting at a desk job all day, and also just the residue of the past couple of years and just life in general. Anyways, my frustration just increased all day. So when I was at the gym and my knee started to hurt, I couldn't really exercise or lift the way that I wanted to because I didn't want to hurt my knee. I get really anxious about that because I don't know, I've just always had I've just been a chronically tight person. My muscles have just chronically been tight since I was little. I feel like every time I get a massage, they're like, why are you so tight? I'm like, I don't know. Like, I'm not trying to do this. I'm not doing this for attention, which is what my brain tells me. Like, I can't fake being tight. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to be tight. It's miserable. And so I think other people's voices get in my head about stuff like that. And so I was battling that type of stuff and those thoughts of like, I'm just being a victim. I'm being such a baby, blah, blah, blah. You're so sensitive. So I didn't do my full workout because my knee started to hurt. So I pivoted a little bit. And then I was like, you know what? I did my best today. I'm done. Like, I just want to go home. I need to cry. I need to just like be alone. So I tried not to cry on my way home. Got home, walked inside my apartment, and almost immediately dropped to my knees and just was crying. And I was like, what am I feeling? Like, what's the core feeling that's coming up? And I kind of did some cry searching. I don't know how to explain it other than I'm sure all of us have done it maybe, but sometimes I just feel totally overwhelmed emotionally. I don't know what I'm feeling. Like, I don't know exactly what I'm feeling and why I'm so sad. But I knew there was a reason this time. Like, I knew it was something. So while I was feeling sad, I kind of started to really dig deep into those feelings. Like, why am I feeling so sad right now? Nothing crazy happened today. And then it just got me thinking to the past couple of weeks. I've just had a few experiences of hearing or seeing things about people that don't understand people like me, or people who are sensitive, one, and have OCD, two. There's so much hate on the internet that for some reason has been on my algorithm, has been in other people's comments that I follow. It kind of just reiterates this feeling of being chronically misunderstood. And a lot of feelings came up that had to do with, there's so many times that things were said to me like, you shouldn't feel that way. Why are you being so sensitive? You're turning yourself into a victim. All of these different things. It's not a big deal. Just certain phrases that to the person saying it, they don't know to the extent that that's hurtful to me, and was hurtful to a little girl that was incredibly sensitive. Anyways, and so it made me think back to my childhood. And I've been thinking about this a lot. And I think because I have nieces and nephews, when you have kids around you, it does remind you of your own childhood and your own child self. And sometimes it's hard for me to get to their level because it's like kind of painful sometimes. I don't know how to describe it. Anyway, so I just have had so many memories come up when I was really little, like since I can remember, ruminating and compulsing to try to save myself, to try to pray away bad things, to try to figure out the meaning of life. Even when we went to science camp and one time we saw the moon through a telescope, that whole rest of the week was just spent ruminating. And I was like 8 years old. I was just ruminate, and there'd always be something else. And every little thing felt so big to me. I don't know how to describe being sensitive. I don't know what's OCD, what's not OCD in terms of my sensitivity. I think that definitely adds to the OCD, but I do think I'm just sensitive. Every therapist I've gone to, when I explain how I feel sometimes and what things make me feel what way, they say, have you ever read The Highly Sensitive Person by, I don't remember her name, but the girl who kind of like labeled it? I'm not kidding. Every single therapist that I've gone to has said that. And so when I think back to being a little girl who was so anxious about so many tiny irrational things, felt such big things in not big circumstances, and then being told, even as harmless as like siblings or friends, like when you're young, that stuff gets into your subconscious, and that's, you know, the people you relate to is how you're going to relate to the world later on. So if that's the way you think you're perceived by everybody else as you're a baby, you shouldn't feel that way, blah, blah, blah. Then as you get older, that stuff starts to resurface and you're like, oh my gosh, where is this coming from? So then I think after a long time of being told that and catching a vibe from people that I'm too much, that I feel too much, I started to be like, okay, fine, then none of you get this. None of you get this part of me. Then I will just act like I will blend in and I will camouflage myself and act like I don't care about any of this stuff because I'm exhausted by having to fight for myself, I guess. So I think that just was me closing off to other people because I always felt misunderstood. And there's something so painful about feeling misunderstood with the people around you. And then eventually you're like not even really who you are. And you're not even really living the way that you want to show up in the world because you're too scared of being misunderstood because it was painful for you as a little girl or a little boy. And then that also shows up in relationships. For me, it shows up in ways that if Keaton doesn't totally understand what I'm going through, it just is so much bigger than it really rationally is. But the feelings that I get when I feel misunderstood are so painful. I know that, and I think it's just better to have more patience and compassion with yourself when you have these big reactions to things internally, rather than being like, oh, I shouldn't feel that way, because how unhelpful is that? So all of that being said, I think just feeds into loneliness, because when people don't understand you, you feel like, what's wrong with me? Am I not good at talking to people? Am I not able to translate something? Does no one else feel the way that I feel ever? Or am I just bad at explaining it? And then if you've kind of closed yourself off for so long to having really intimate relationships emotionally, then when the time comes, it's really scary and it's really painful almost to open it up. And then also, when people say things like you shouldn't feel that way, or you're being dramatic, or you're too sensitive, then you start to feel lonely. You start to feel like nobody wants to be with me. When I feel big stuff, like I've always felt too much emotionally for everybody that I've ever been with. And so I hold it in sometimes, but then it explodes. Yeah, so that makes this shameful feeling of what's wrong with me. Why do I feel different than everybody else? Even though logically I know that there's a lot of people that feel almost the exact same way as me, and they didn't have the exact upbringing that I did, and the exact friends and family and experiences and religion and all of the same factors, but some core feelings I think a lot of us can relate to each other. I think another thing that makes you feel lonely is if you have suffered with OCD or anxiety your whole life and other people around you haven't chronically dealt with it the same way, even if everyone's experiences with it is so different. But sometimes if I were to talk to my friends and family and I say, okay, this is how my brain is working, does your brain ever do that? When I was younger, no single person. And if it did, they didn't tell me. They were too scared to admit it, or they didn't even realize that was happening. As an adult now, I can talk to people, and I do feel like I can relate a lot more to a lot of experiences, and a lot of people that I know now actually have OCD. It's still different, and but my little girl brain has already, I guess, like understood herself as different than everybody else, and my brain is bad, and all of that kind of stuff. And so it is helpful as an adult to work on that, and I think it is possible to retrain that. But sometimes feelings will linger, because if you really did feel alone with your mental illness for that long, that's so hard, and that's a big deal because it's in your mind. So mostly it's all the time that people are dealing with that stuff. You're having to mask it. I am so unbelievably good at acting like everything's totally okay when I feel like I want to die, when I feel like I'm not. I'm so good at faking that everything's okay. Not as much anymore. I mean, I still can, but I try not to, because I try to take a second, and even though it's kind of annoying, sometimes I'm like, okay, let's not act like everything's okay. Let's take a second. Let's figure out what's happening, and then let's make a plan and move forward. But if you've been really good at faking being okay and kind of not masking, but kind of putting on a mask and like, oh, what it's just very high functioning depression or anxiety or OCD, to where no one would really know, especially if it's all in my head, then no one really does know. And the only things I might notice is maybe I talking slower, I'm maybe not as cutesied up, my makeup isn't done as much, or I might be slouching a little bit more. There's certain things that maybe show that someone's mentally going through it, that I think when you go through it, you can spot it in other people and even in their mannerisms. So people could notice probably, but most people don't. But if you've done that for so long, then it also is this like practice of faking it, and like, oh, in order to live, I need to be fake. And I think that's not where we're going to find a lot of peace, because that's going to be exhausting. And I know that there's times where you can't be exactly how you feel. I do think a lot of feelings like that, especially if they're from real wounds and real things people have said and done to you, that it is from a place that really loves you. Like, it is from our hearts and our soul sometimes, that knows that we deserve better, that knows that we want better, we want more for ourselves. So it is painful. And I think sometimes that's what it comes up in, is feelings and these lingering emotions. But it also takes a while to kind of be able to translate that even in our own minds of, okay, what is this feeling, and what is this trying to teach me? What is it trying to help me with? Sometimes they're random. A lot of the times feelings are very random. But I think if you're feeling overwhelmed and you're feeling big feelings, and it's pretty clear what the feelings are about, those ones especially we need to take our time with. Because I do think sometimes our feelings are trying to teach us something very, very valuable. Going back to the beginning of when I was talking about how I've been feeling really lonely, I think all of those factors were why I've been feeling lonely. And I've been thinking about being about myself as a kid. So I think that's also why it's coming up. But also, I think I'm just craving letting people in to some parts of me and some parts of my heart, because I think I've been missing that with my whole life. How close can someone get to you? I don't know. But I feel like they can get closer than I have been with other people. And I don't think that's an easy thing to do, and that takes a long time. And I'm close to people in my life. I'm not saying I'm not close to people, but I think there's some parts of me, as there are some parts of you, that not really anybody knows about. And those little nooks in your heart, those holes in your heart that not everybody sees. And so I think those are where you can get really vulnerable. I think that's what that's trying to teach me, is I need to be really honest with people around me, and I need to be really honest with my boundaries, or what I need, what I don't need, what I want help with, my expectations, even just to express them to other people so that they see me and that I have a voice. I think that sometimes, I think specifically for me, that's what my feelings today are telling me. So I'm going to move forward with that as like an intention or a plan to do that, and think of the things that I can do think of the things that I've been limiting myself with and been hurting my own self with because of limiting beliefs or shame or whatever. And so all in all, I'm grateful for my big feelings today. And now we've come full circle. But it ain't always easy to do, and it's not always easy to figure out what's happening in your body and in your heart and your mind and stuff. Okay, well, and with all of that being said, I do feel like something that does really help me, if you're interested, I'm not trying to push it on you. I do think something that helps with that is prayer, or, to whatever God or whatever you have faith in. If you don't have faith, that's fine. But I think those little nooks and parts of your heart that feel really empty and really deep, I think that's what people say is like a God-sized hole in your heart. And even though I'm really mad sometimes at God because of really unfair things that have happened, sometimes I don't feel like I'm allowed to express those frustrations with a higher being or God. But I always feel better when I do, and I'm just almost unfiltered, but being like, I'm grateful, but also this, and this is a really good way to relieve a lot of things. Okay, well, I do feel better, actually. I feel like I was able to think through and feel through everything. So thank you guys for listening, and hopefully it was helpful, because I do feel like it's a very common experience especially if most of my listeners have struggled with anxiety or OCD or depression. It is something that I think all of us can relate to. And even if we can't necessarily fill the holes in each other's hearts, as weird as that sounds, and bear with me, since we most likely can't really fill those holes most of the time for other random people, I think what we can do though is we can witness those holes. This sounds so stupid. I'm just saying I do think we can all relate to having those parts of our heart. And that's our common ground. We can do dubs and L's for this week, and then we're not going to do Dear Abby because I'm going to wrap it up short. I just need some time for myself. And I'm actually almost at 100 episodes, so I don't know what to do for my 100th episode, but I feel like I have to do something fun and cool. So I don't know what that will be yet, but I'm very excited, and that's crazy. I've been doing this podcast for years now, which is kind of crazy. How do I have that many different things to talk about every week? I probably talk about, I feel like I talk about the same things very often, but also how have I talked that much to myself into a camera? Okay, so dubs this week. So my best friend lives in Arizona and she's a florist, very talented florist, and we've been dreaming of my wedding and doing a wedding and her being my florist. And so now that it's happening, we're both ecstatic. And she very kindly drove here, and she has a little baby too. So she brought her little family to California and she stayed with her in-laws. And then we went to the LA flower market, so in Los Angeles. And it was a crazy place, I will say, but the flowers were crazy. There was so many there was tens of thousands of flowers, a couple thousand different kinds of flowers. And it was like if you were to fill a football stadium full of flowers, is how many flowers are probably on that block with all these buildings that had flowers. So we went there to go look at what I'd want for my wedding and pick some specific flowers, but also I think just see everything in person and to figure out what the vibe is, because I've had a bunch of different ideas for the color schemes. If I want it to just be all green and white, or if I want it to be romantic, like dark reds and purples and pinks. And then I've also thought about just doing like roses, and I don't know. It's just, I've gone all over the place, but we've narrowed it down. We narrowed it down, and I think we had the same vibe and idea even before. And so we were able to piggyback off of each other, and we have a concept now. We have the vibes, and so yeah, I'm just really excited. So that's definitely a dub, because that's a huge part of a wedding is the flowers. L is, I think, just that my joints are hurting and my migraines. I mentioned that earlier, but it is really painful, and I think it is just from sitting at a desk, and I try to stretch and do all the right stuff, but I still get migraines very often. Don't know how I hurt my knee, because I try to stretch, but I think I could definitely roll out more and find better stretches or knee strengthening things to do. I don't know. But I feel like every time I work out or start lifting weights, my knees start to hurt. So I try to do it with good form and all that stuff and good alignment, but I don't feel like it matters. Like, I just feel like I need a personal trainer to help me and be with me every single time I work out, because if not, then I'm like, I'm going to pull something. I'm going to hurt my knee. I don't want to get knee surgery. That is a cause of anxiety for me, but that's okay. Okay, well, that's it for today's episode. You've got a friend in me. Also, I just realized I'm wearing Los Angeles is Lonely shirt from probably Lonely Ghost. Maybe it was in my subconscious all day. So maybe what I said before isn't real. Maybe it's literally just because I saw it on my sweatshirt, so I thought of being lonely. Okay, I'm going to go make some homemade pizza, listen to some good old lo-fi, or there's a you guys, there's a YouTube, okay, let me finish first. There's a YouTube video that's like Hogwarts Legacy afternoon something. I don't remember what it's called, but it's basically, there's two of them. There's one that's in a library, so you're like in the Hogwarts library, and it's just background like fall sounds. It's an ambiance. The other one is like Hogwarts music, like oh my gosh, not Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter music, but classical or instrumental lo-fi mix with like wind sounds. And that one, you're looking at the castle from almost right outside the gate. I mean, There's so many incredible YouTube videos that just have, that's like 8 hours or they're always live or something. And underneath those YouTube videos, if you ever need your faith to be restored in humanity, read through those YouTube comments because every one of them is so sweet and they always are they're like just beautiful people that are commenting saying, hey, if you're reading this, like you're important, you're beautiful, blah, blah, blah. And there's so many of those comments and that stuff restores my faith in humanity. So if you need to pick me up in an ambiance, that is a beautiful ambiance to have, especially for fall. Harry Potter season. Also, I'm most likely going to stream this Saturday. I'm going to stream a Nancy Drew game because it's fall, so it's spooky vibes. And I'm going to try to round up my family to play Dead by Daylight, which is another spooky game that we love to play. And I want to convince them to let me stream it because I miss my streaming days. They're just fun. But I will be streaming Nancy Drew. So look out for that. I'll be posting about it. But I'm going to do it on Saturday or Sunday. I haven't decided which day yet. I feel like Sunday more people might want to tune in or might not want to tune in. So I don't know the vibes. That's it for today's episode, you guys. Thank you so much for listening today and for being there with me and for going through that with me. What a crazy day it's been. But I love you guys and I hope you have a great weekend. Take yourself out, have fun, be kind to yourself. And don't invalidate yourself. And also don't invalidate other people. So, okay, love you guys. Bye. 우회전 taking a ride to chronically 눈치 보면서 들어가 할 때 찾아 나머진 바빠 계속